Yo, what's up guys, it's Talon. So today we're going to be making a video talking about what your champion pool should look like next season for each role, depending on the role that you want to, main in the next season, and sort of just how to develop a proper champion pool. So we're just going to start off with top lane and go through every role, basically the main things you need in each role for a champion pool. So starting off with top lane, the first thing that you're going to want, especially if you only want to kind of one-trick a champion, is going to be a bruiser. If you just want to play one champion always, a bruiser is almost always going to be the best type of one trick, because the bruiser can fit into every team comp. It can usually be a blind pick, it can be a counter pick, you can pick it into tanks, you can pick it into squishies, you can pick it to be a frontline engage, you can pick it to more carry the game. Basically, a bruiser is pretty much like the best, most important thing to have in any champion pool for top lane. Now typically you're going to want 3 or 4 champions in your champion pool ideally. However, I don't mind if you do 1 or just 2 as well. Any of these amounts is fine, but anywhere from, say, probably 2 to 4 champions is going to be the ideal amount of champions to have in your champion pool. So again, starting off with that bruiser, that's going to be the most important thing. Then after that, you're oftentimes going to want a carry champion of some sort. Now, carry champions could be a champion like a split pusher like Camille, Fiora, or Jax, or it could be something like Jace, where he's more of a ranged top laner who can carry quite hard. So that could be another example of that. Even if you are a fan of certain ranged top laners like Vayne or whatever, if you have certain scenarios where you like counterpicking those types of champions, that's fine. So basically, any type of range top or carry top laner, or a split pusher like a Jax, Fiora, just anything that can really 1v9 a game when you have other front lines on your team, that's going to be really nice to have. Then after that is just going to be a tank top laner. So anytime that your team, they pick a really bad team comp overall, you might want to lock in that tank top laner. So you can have a champion like Ornn, for example, like Malphite, just anything that can consistently make good engages and just be a consistent rock for your team. No pun intended with the Malphite comment, but you guys know what I mean. Just having that tank top laner that you can really kind of just be able to just fit any team comp with. And then lastly would be an AP top laner. So obviously if your teammates don't have very many AP, maybe they picked 4 AD champions, well then you might want to, in that case, pick an AP top laner. So having a champion like Gragas, Mordekaiser, Gwen, any of those types of champions. So again, to reiterate, having an AP champion is quite nice. Having a tank, a bruiser, and then a carry / split pushing champion. Ideally, you have a couple of those. If you only want to stick to 1 or 2, I recommend definitely having a bruiser, and then also probably having a carry. Those are probably going to be the 2 main things that I recommend, again, out of those 4, but all 4, if you can have that, is also going to be really, really nice. Okay, so now moving on to the jungle, the first thing you're going to probably want is an assassin. So anything to pick when the enemy team comp is really squishy. So some examples of assassins right now would be Echo, Diana, Talon, Lee Sin when you're building First Strike, Zed, all of these types of champions. Any of these, it's going to be really nice to have one of those assassins just for when the enemy pick a really squishy comp, and you kind of need that champion to just one-shot them. After that, you're going to want a tank / ganking champion. So either a full tank that's really good at ganking, or just a bruiser who does really well at ganking. The reason you're going to want this is anytime that you don't have the strongest laners, and you want to have something that can kind of help them out, or if you have really strong laners and you want to snowball the game really well. Either way, having a tank / gank champion is going to work really nice, and it's going to be nice to have that to engage later on in the game. So examples of this would be Vi, Volibear, Amumu, Rammus, all of these types of champions are just a few examples. After that, you might want just some type of bruiser champion, so something more like the Rivens of the world that's pretty tanky, pretty strong, good damage, pretty versatile. These bruisers, again, are just going to be really good in most scenarios, similar to top lane. And then lastly, again, is going to be an AP jungler. And notice how, again, some of the assassins I mentioned are AP as well. For example, again, Echo or Diana, or if you went for a tank, you could play Nunu, and she's kind of a tank and AP. So you can kind of have, one AP champion fitting multiple different categories, but generally you're going to want at least 1 AP champion as well, of course, whenever your team picks a lot of AD, especially when your mid laner picks AD. So again, to reiterate, for jungle, the main thing you're going to want: an assassin, a tank / ganking champion, a bruiser, and then an AP champion. That's overall going to be really good for a jungle champion pool. Okay, now moving on to the mid lane. So in mid lane, you're going to want ideally at least an assassin of some sort. So again, the nice thing is if you do play jungle and mid or something like this, you can play these champions in multiple roles. So Echo or a Diana are a couple great assassins. That as well. A lot of the assassins in mid also work in the jungle. You could also play champions like Kassadin. Just any type of assassin is going to be really nice. Again, if the enemy pick a mage like, for example, Syndra, it's going to be really nice to pick some type of assassin into those types of champions. After that, you're going to want a mage yourself. Having a mage is really nice for just consistent lane bullying and scaling. They have really good range, really consistent, just overall really great picks. champions like Syndra, Orianna, Victor, some of the ones that come to mind. Then after that, you're going to want a lane bully, like especially an AD lane bully oftentimes, so a champion like Akshan or Jace, or even champions like Yasuo or Yone are not bad, even though they're kind of assassins, not exactly lane bullies, but just that type of thing, you know, an AD champion or oftentimes a lane bully as well. And then again, make sure out of your champion pool, at least one of those is AD and one is AP. That way you can pick, you know, for the different scenario as well in terms of damage type. And then lastly, you might want a supportive champion in an ideal world. So having a champion like Galio might be nice. Not only are you tanky, have good engage, but you're also, you know, again, very supportive, very good at helping your team. Or even a champion like Karma mid lane might not be bad. But again, overall, you're going to want some type of assassin. You're going to want a mage and a lane bully. And then you're going to want to make sure that you have both AD and AP in that champion pool. And if, again, you want an extra champion in your champion pool, having a supportive champion can also work out quite nicely. Okay, so the ADC champion pool is kind of a bit different in how I would sort of categorize it compared to some of these other ones. So a couple of things that you're going to want in your champions will fit, like multiple champions will fit multiple different categories. So some of the things you want to make sure you have a scaling late game champion as well as an early game champion. That way you have times where you can pick to bully the lane and stomp the game. And you also have times to pick to carry the late game if you have already some good early game in your team, for example. You're also going to want to make sure that you have a short range and a long range champion. The main reason you want both a short range and a long range champion is because some champions get countered really hard by long range, and you're going to want to pick, you know, for example, into a Lucian, you're going to want something like Caitlyn or Varus or Ashe with really high range. But into champions, you know, who deal, you know, who struggle when you get on top of them and you have a really aggressive support or whatever, you're going to want that short range champion like Lucian or Draven to really just get right on top of people and burst them down when your teammate CCs them. Overall as well, you're going to want to make sure that one of your champions at least is good with enchanters and one of them is good with tanks. That way you can play with any type of support and you don't have to always be worried that, you know, you have to get a certain support in order to do well. And then you also want to make sure you have a poke champion and a sustained damage champion. So a champion like Kai'Sa, for example, has really good sustained damage as well as burst damage. And a champion like Varus or Ezreal is very good at poking people down. So basically, overall, you want to make sure that at least one of your champions is good in the late game and at least one of them is good in the early game. You want to make sure that at least one of them is long range and at least one is short range. And then you want to make sure that at least one's good with enchanters and one's good with tanks. So if you have that, again, champions are going to fit multiple categories. Realistically, it'd probably only be 3 maybe champions. So for example, if I were to just give you an example of 3 champions that would fit these things, you could have Lucian for both good early game and the short range. You could have a champion like Ashe for the good early game and the good long range. And then you could have a scaling long-range champion like Zeri to fit that as well. Zeri would be really good with enchanters. Lucian would be really good with tanks as well as enchanters. It could be kind of, you know, fitting anything. And then Ashe as well could kind of be good, especially with, you know, tanks, but really good with everything. So that's kind of just an example of a random champion pool. I'm not saying that's what you should do. That's just an example of how you would have 3 champions, but they would fit all 6 of those categories. All right, so lastly, we have support, and this is going to be pretty straightforward, pretty simple. So the initial thing I'm going to have is that you're going to want to play, ideally, a tank champion. That's really going to be the main thing you're going to prefer having, especially if you're a solo queue support player. Definitely have a tank in your champion pool. You know, you can have the Leona, Thresh, Nautilus, whatever you want. Make sure you have something that can make those plays work really well with those aggressive champions and, you know, again, provide that front line for your team. After that, having an enchanter is extremely nice. Anytime that you have a hyper carry and you want to lock in an enchanter with them, it's going to be really nice to utilize things that are OP like Veil, for example, to really just help your AD carry, you know, completely carry and pop off. So definitely having an enchanter as well. Very, very nice. And then those are the 2 main things that you should have, ideally. But an additional thing you can have is a carry support if you want. So if you like a champion like Lux, like Karma, like, you know, the Swain or the Jarvan, you know, any of these champions that are more carry oriented, more about carrying the team, Pyke as well. Any of those champions can be nice to have if you do prefer that sort of carry play style on support overall. So again, those are going to be the 3 main things: have an enchanter, a tank, and a carry if you're going to play support. So overall, guys, that's going to do it for the video. I really want to reiterate, however, that champion pool is not the most important thing. What's most important is that you're comfortable on your champions, you enjoy playing them, and you do well on them. So just because I gave you guys this, you know, guideline for what to do in terms of champion pool, if you really just want to one-trick your favorite champion, then do that, and you're going to be able to climb just fine. Or if you really like playing specifically assassins, then just play assassins. You know, you do you. Whatever works for you is still going to be fun. You're going to enjoy it, and you're going to be able to climb doing really whatever. But this is just a guideline for those who do want a bit more of an overall, like, overview of that type of thing. So as always, I do coaching on my YouTube channel. $15 an hour. Just, you know, DM me on Discord, Talon1169, or through the link in the description. You can join my Discord channel as well if you're interested in that. I also have memberships on my YouTube channel, just $5 to join that for a month, where you get access to my coaching notes and you get access to some other cool things like videos early. But yeah, again, that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.